Hi, this is Lori Marie, and welcome to the final episode of season 1 for the Deep Thynkers Society. Where do ghosts live? Do they live in your home? Do they live in the cemetery? Do they live in the fourth dimension? Are they a figment of our imagination? Do they even exist? Let's find out today on this episode of Deep Thynkers Society when we talk to Travelers Moon Paranormal Investigators, Chris and Kelly. Let's go. Hi, Chris and Kelly. I'm Lori Marie, and this is Maddie Frequency and Chris C with Deep Thinker Society. How are you guys today?
Hey, I'm good.
Thank you.
So, you guys are both a pair with Traveler Moon. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yep, we're the whole unit. That's all there is.
We'd love to hear how you guys came to be, and maybe a little bit more about this paranormal business that you two are living your journey with.
Yeah. So we are paranormal investigators out of central eastern Iowa and Cedar Rapids. And I don't know, it's a feel hard to put it just in that simple little box because we both do quite a bit in the realm of the the paranormal,
We've both been into the paranormal for a lot of years, and we like to approach things both from the more technical side of things, but then we also both of us have abilities ourselves, so we like to use that and kind of come at our investigations from both directions. We feel like it gives us like a more holistic picture of the investigation.
So that means that you've have isolated experiences maybe from when you were younger, or like where did this stem from for you guys?
Yeah, definitely. So it teeters on like a paranormal investigator cliche to say I grew up in a haunted house, but in both of our cases that was definitely the case. And it was one of those environments where and actually I think it very much forms how we conduct ourselves on a paranormal investigation. It wasn't one of those like, oh crap, we have the ghost kind of settings in our household. It was very relaxed. It was a extension of the family we just couldn't see. That corner over there, that's not scary. It's just a place where we can't take the dogs to take them outside because they get a little weirded out. But that's fine. If it's we hear my grandparents had these wind chimes up against the cabinets that if you heard those going off, that wasn't scary. That was them just saying hi.
Yeah. And you just get used to having roommates that you can't see, and things happen. It's not that big of a deal. And it almost it was funny because in the house that I grew up in, we'd go through stretches on occasion where it got really quiet. And we'd even make comments like, we haven't heard from the ghost for a little while. And you'd watch as things just systematically started falling off the shelf. It's like, okay, you're here. We got it. Stop knocking things over, but.
So you guys, so for me, when my grandparents lived in a really old home and that home is still there, I can't even imagine now. But when I would go to sleep on the couch, the hallway, when you look in the hall, it went to the bathroom. So I would see shadows go from one room into the bathroom, close the door, and then, I would creep, and like not look. And then they would never come out. And then like later it would go out of the other bedroom and into the bathroom, and then they'd never come out. And so did you have those types of like shadow people, or was it more of like apparitions or?
My first so like I said, growing up in that environment, that was just kind of one of those like weird things would happen, but you didn't really that's just kind of how that was. But my first personal to me experience was actually pretty for myself at the time at least quite terrifying. I was about 8 years old, and it was actually a full-bodied apparition. So I had it was my grandparents' house, and I had gone over quite early in the morning. It was like 4 a.m. or something like that. My dad works in law enforcement. He had been called in, so I got dropped off at grandma and grandpa's. And to go into their house, you can either keep going down the hallway, up the stairs that ran parallel, or you take a right into the living room, which is where I was sitting at the time. And I'm, spazzy little 8-year-old boy. I'm tossing and turning. I'm rolling over on the day bed, and I roll over, and from where I'm laying, I can see the bottom of the stairs. And there's this little boy. He's just sitting there, and he's hunkered down. He's looking at me. And in a lot of stories, you hear from paranormal investigators, and even a lot of my own, it's always very quick for some reason, right? It's like I saw it, and then it was gone. I don't know what happened. But unfortunately for 8-year-old Chris, this was not the case, because I see him the first time and I'm like, oh, damn, that's not normal. So I do that universal protection of throwing a blanket over my head.
Blanket.
And it felt like forever, but it probably was only like 5 minutes or so. But I eventually, I get the courage to look back out, and he's actually still just sitting there. And thinking about it now, looking back at the situation, like that makes perfect sense, right? Like, oh my gosh, like it was this little boy. He saw another little boy. He's like, okay, cool, sweet, someone I can be friends with. I didn't share that mentality at the time, but yeah, that's how it started. It just very much snowballed from there.
For me, it wasn't so much that I saw things very often. On occasion, we'd see a shadow here or there. My earliest memories of moving into the house where we had the unseen housemates is getting in trouble for what they would do, because we moved across town, and it was the very first time I had my own room. I was upstairs. I was by myself, didn't have to share a room, away from my parents, and like I was 10, so I still had a bedtime, and I'd be in bed, sound asleep, and my mother would yell up the stairs, "Kelly, get your butt in bed. You have school tomorrow." I'm like, I'm in bed. And it was always stuff like that. Quit sliding those chairs on those hardwood floors. You're going to wreck it. I'm not. I haven't moved anything, And I mean, to the extent that one night, like my mom just swore, she thought for sure I was lying, because it was so distinct, such distinct sounds, that she crept upstairs to try to fetch me awake, and I'm sound asleep in bed. So it wasn't ever, most of our stuff was sound. Most of it was sound for me, at least. Mom saw things, I know, but for me, it was mostly sounds. But like, I'd be sitting in my bedroom, and again, hardwood floors. If someone walked down the hallway, you could hear it. And like, I heard someone walk down my hallway. I could tell by the way that the board squeaked how much that person weighed. So I assumed it was my father. Gets outside my door, and I'm waiting for him to knock, thinking he's waiting to see if I'm awake. I'm a teenager, I think, at this point. And so I thought I'll save him the hassle. Like, Dad, I'm awake, nothing. And I'm like, why isn't he coming in? And I get up and go over, and I'm like, maybe I locked my door. He's not there. Nobody's there. No footsteps going away from the door. So it's not like somebody snuck and decided to walk away. I'd heard him walk away. So it wasn't usually scary. And the things that did scare me, I would say, is more because of my age than anything else. I was young.
Yeah.
How did you two come together?
So we actually, as a team, we've only been doing this for
5 years.
about 5 years, but there's actually about 40 years experience between the two of us.
Wow. That's amazing. That's awesome.
So
I actually, with my mom and I host expos in Iowa. So they're called the Psychic and Paranormal Expos. And how many years has it been now? Good Lord.
13.
13. About 13 years ago, we had this group sign up to come and be one of our vendors, and in walks Chris and his dad, and we just clicked, and we became really quick friends and started investigating together. And we complement each other well, because where he's really great with technology, learning how to use it, explaining how to use it, I'm really great at breaking it. He's really great at like trying to put a logical answer to everything, and I'm great at reminding him sometimes it's your intuition, and there's not like something you can pick up and feel to make it real. So he's
also the self-preservation, like,
oh God,
of the two of us. We actually just had a very,
you have no idea. He'd still be stuck in a tunnel if I was there.
No, we would both still be stuck in the tunnel. It's one of the few times you decided to follow me. We just the other weekend.
I don't know what was wrong with me.
We were exploring a location off in central Indiana. It was an old combination. So it opened as a tuberculosis sanatorium, but it was also a psychiatric hospital and nursing home. Not together, separate buildings, but all these buildings were connected with tunnels underneath.
So we were told.
Which, as paranormal investigators, those are some of the sexiest words ever. Is like there's
Underground
tunnels.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
So I was jazzed, and I was extra excited when I found like this weird little hobbit hole in one of them. And I'm like the kind of person, no second thought. I'm like, I'm going in that hole.
Kelly, on the other hand, is standing looking at this hole that's about 2 foot tall, about that wide. It is dark. It is wet as hell. There's mud all over in there. And I'm thinking, what are we doing? But we were told that the tunnels connected all the building, and we knew there was one more building. And I'm like, okay, fine.
Long story short, that hole wasn't the way.
No, it wasn't.
Wait, did you both go in that hole?
We did.
Yeah. Normally I let him do the stupid things all on his own, but for some reason I decided this time I was going to follow him into the little dark hole and see where it went. And it was a bad decision. It was a bad decision. Shoes were wrecked. Moods
I don't
were.
know that I would do that. Yeah, so I give it to you both for being brave like that.
Well, and the funny thing was we kept going down this tunnel, and I mean the mud's up to our ankles at some point. And I'm thinking in my head, we're going to hit a dead end. This isn't going anywhere. And I'm just about to the point to tell him either we find the exit or I turn around, and he turns around and looks at me. He's like, oh no, it's a dead end. It's a dead end. We can't go anywhere. We have to turn around and walk back through all of that.
So what do you think? What do you think it was?
So these were the steam tunnels for the building. They would be used on occasion because I'm assuming there were windows in there so that people could run things from building to building underneath. But they also being the steam tunnels, you'd have certain areas like back in the day when it was heated by steam that it just was reaching basically to a further corner of the building. So that's what that dead end I'm assuming was all about, was just the fact that like it's those actual like steam pipes needed to go to this area. And to keep it open for maintenance was just advantageous for the property owners at the time. But
in our defense, there were steam tunnels in the other tunnels that or steam pipes in the other tunnels we were walking through as well that actually did go somewhere. So made sense.
So this trip to the buildings sounds really interesting. Could you tell us more about the whole experience in general, or did you find anything, or like what was it like?
So it was actually just kind of a detour for us. We happen to find like weird little adventures kind of wherever we go. We were just that weekend at the Ohio State Reformatory.
Oh my God.
In Mansfield, Ohio. If you're not familiar with like the name of the building, a lot of people are familiar with the actual prison itself still. It's where they filmed the Shawshank Redemption.
You guys went there?
So yeah, we had spent the whole weekend hanging out at Shawshank for a paranormal convention. We vended a few of those annually.
Which is super cool because like we get to set up our booth outside of the cells. So we spend the whole weekend in the West Cell block with the cells right behind us, the showers just a few feet away from us. And like, it's the coolest thing.
Oh, yeah.
And this time we actually got to investigate Friday night. So we've been there multiple times, but this is our first time that we actually had like hours to go and investigate it. Was something, that's for sure.
Do tell. Let's hear it.
So I'm kind of geeking out. So like Kelly mentioned, and this is peculiar, I guess wasn't necessarily part of like the introduction process. So aside from me being like the tech person and Kelly also being investigator, Kelly is a very gifted psychic medium. I'm more prone to seeing things, and I know I'm not schizophrenic because I can turn it on and off. I'm a shamanic practitioner, so I work a lot with nature, land spirits, and despite all of these things, I am the very like logic brain, almost annoyingly so. And it was so cool. I had one of those experiences that like really brought back like, I remember there was a weird like magic to my first couple of years doing this, where it was just like it's always like it's obviously the coolest stuff ever to me still because I've been doing it for this long, but it was it's an experience where
unequivocally there is no explanation for it. So yeah.
Because a lot of times I can like, if nothing else, I can chalk it up to I'm very open to the idea that maybe I'm just crazy with all this.
Well, I highly doubt that, but what was your experience?
Oh, I don't know.
So we were up in the attic, what they call the attic of the Ohio State Reformatory. And there is off the cathedral, there is this great big room that doesn't have any cells or anything in it. It's just this like
maybe
a little bit longer,
100 feet
football
wide,
field.
300-yard room.
It's huge. And what the history of this room is that when the Ohio State Reformatory was opened as a reformatory, so they only had prisoners in there that they thought maybe they could potentially help, that maybe someday would be
Non-violent offenders, very
Right,
petty
right.
crimes.
So, however, there was another prison not too far away where it took the naughty people, and there was a fire. And they had 200 inmates where they had to put them somewhere, 200 men. And so Ohio State Reformatory says, yeah, sure, we'll help out. Rather than intermingling these bigger offenders in with the people they're trying to reform, though, they thought, we're just going to take this great big room, we're going to shove them all in that room. No beds, no cells, or not beds. No cells, no walls, no locks, just other than the door into the room. They take them all, they put them into this room. The only thing that shows that it's anything other than an attic is at the very back of the room, there's like 4 or 5 shower stalls, is all. Otherwise, it's just ginormous open room that was full of men at one point.
Fantastic experiment in human behavior. And
Right.
although according to the like official records, there were no actual like real incidents there, no murders, anything like that. To talk to previous guards in the area, it was a different story. So
Yeah.
that kind of depends on who's,
Definitely doesn't mean that there wasn't some abuse that ran in there.
Yeah,
But-
all in all, you have that many men who are very high energy in general,
Mhm.
they're high energy, but intense from maybe whatever reason they're in jail for, in the room together. You've got a ball of like something.
Right.
So,
Right.
so what was your psychic experience or your visual experience?
Actually it was very physical. So I'm kind of old school when it comes to my investigation techniques. I appreciate things more like putting flour down and looking for footprints or devices that, as minimal possible outside interference as possible. That's what's best for me. And one of my go-to techniques is I like hanging just glow sticks from fishing line, which in the world of paranormal investigating, that's also as cheap as you can get.
I mean,
We just went and dropped,
couple bucks of dollars,
couple
right?
$100 on a REM pod EMF meter combo, but
Which is really cool.
but this is $2. You can't hate on that. So about halfway down this huge room, there are these 2 cross beams that come in the form of an X in the middle of the room, and they met just about eye level with me. It's probably 5.5-ish feet off the ground, 6 feet off the ground. And I'm like, okay, well, this is a cool spot to hang a glow stick. Let's see what happens. So toss it over, tie it to the fishing line, and we're down on the far end now where the cells are.
Where the showers are.
Showers. And myself, Kelly, and a lady who was with us that evening, we start watching as this thing is going like this. And that sway starts happening. And this is the most obvious thing I've ever seen with this experiment in the 10 years I've been doing it.
And we're all seeing this happen. But being logical, we're like, okay, what if there's a cross breeze? Is something making that move? We're not right there on top of it. Can you swing it the other direction? Start swinging the other direction.
Oh my gosh.
And
It gets better.
better, and then for me, worse.
Okay,
So we're in a prison. We're in a men's prison.
the whole thing started because there was a comment made about a bodily features. So we were enticing them.
Oh.
Kids.
The spirits of lottery.
You use what you got, ladies. I mean,
I've got it. I know I've been on ghost tours and stuff, and I've had that same instance happen So I get it. Yeah.
Well, and that was the thing is when I was sitting there, the experiment was setting up. I moved in a certain way, I guess, and I hear psychically, "Oh, those are some boobs." Okay, well, if that's what gets you going, here we go.
So long story short, my fiance is selling her body to dead guys.
It works.
And she's like, I'll let you see a little more if you could do like more than just swing it a little bit. And all three of us watched this glow stick as it stopped swinging, went
Straight up.
at least
What?
2 feet
What?
to the right,
Where
so that it was
disappeared
behind one of those
the wood
cross beams,
and very
and then
controlled.
very intentionally back to
controlled.
its starting
Back
point.
Oh,
down.
wow.
And stop.
Did you hold up your end of the bargain?
I'm a woman of my words.
And thank God the security cameras of
Yeah.
OSR were malfunctioning that evening.
I didn't think about that aspect until we were leaving, and I was asking one of the guys, I'm like, "You guys have security cameras in that room?"
Oh yeah, fantastic night vision
yeah.
cameras, 4K. Why?
He's like, "It's clear up by the door though." And I'm like, "Well, we were clear at the back of the room. It shouldn't pick up anything we're doing in the back of the room." He's like, "Oh no, it gets great vision."
Sorry.
It's all in the name of paranormal science.
It's for science.
Science.
It's the science.
But it was just,
Which-
it was the clearest thing though. I mean, like, you're watching this lift feet straight up in the air, and I'm thinking somebody's screwing with us.
Yeah, you turned on a light at one
They've
point.
snuck into this room and they're thinking, look at these jackasses sitting there thinking that this is being done by a ghost as I pull the string up, you know? There's
Yeah.
nobody there. There's
Isn't
nobody
it so
there.
funny? Isn't it so funny how we still second guess? Like you have between you two, you have 40 years. You know, I've been experiencing paranormal activity since I was a child in my grandmother's house. Things I've seen, things I've heard, and everything in my heart and soul tells me, yes, Carissa, it is the afterlife. It is a ghost. It is a spirit. It is this. Yes, you feel it. You know intuitively it is that. But I think just our human brain is just trying to just change it up on us, right? Like our human
Logic it out.
Yeah, our human brain is trying to logic it out, but our intuitiveness, our psychic medium abilities are like, no, Carissa, no, Kelly, no, Chris, you guys know that's real. You know,
Yeah.
you know that's real. And it's so funny because my experiences, I'm like, I will sit there and I will just try to reason everything when I'm like,
Right?
why are you doing this? You know
Yeah.
darn well these are your gifts. This is what you do, and you know that's true. Going back to what Chris was saying about his gift and thinking, I know I'm not bipolar. I have said the same exact thing to myself. I don't know how many times.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I know I'm not crazy. I know I'm not bipolar. This is a true message. Like, and then when you're coming into that gift, when you're just learning, oh shit, I got this. Like,
Yeah. But it
you know,
doesn't matter how long you've been doing it or how often you've been right or how many times you've had those, oh God, that was real moments.
Yeah.
I still feel like I'm making things up. You know, it's like, it's just,
Yes.
I'm making things up in my head, you know, and it's like,
yes, I get
Yeah.
that 100%.
yeah.
So you guys said that room, you know, here we for a minute we were talking about a house and
You had
now
more
we're
happen in there.
a prison
Sorry.
and certain rooms and certain buildings, you know, I'm feeling like there's a commonality when people like think of haunted places, right? So and then you might relate a little bit, Kelly, because for me, I'm also a very, very sensitive. I always pick up on it. I always know when there's ghosts, but I feel it a lot in bathrooms of old buildings, like bathrooms. Isn't that
It's
unique?
very weird. Like Alton is one of the places I think about. There's not very many places walking around the Mineral Springs Hotel that like I'm uncomfortable. But going into that women's bathroom off of the ballroom, I don't like that.
You know
Yeah.
how
There's no reason.
well, you know how
I don't
many how many times women go to the bathroom and cry?
Well, yeah, they
I was just
released.
going to say something about that. We're like,
Yeah.
if you,
how
if
many
you have
times
to take a
women-
minute,
Yeah.
It's a place of release, you know. So like they're releasing for anybody,
Mm-hmm.
you know, men, women. They go in there and they're like, you know, even when we release the toxins. But I think it's so interesting that like bathrooms are like, I could go into any home and I tell you right off the bat if that place is haunted or not, just by their bathroom.
I think it's like a vulnerability thing too. At that point, when
Yeah.
you're vulnerable, you're sensitive, you're just a little bit more heightened to your surroundings. It's like the same reason like your dog's in the front yard and he's trying to do his business, but he's also making very intense eye contact with you. Like it's the same thing. He's like, I'm uncomfortable and you're gonna help me through this, right?
I don't know that it always heightens a person's awareness though, because we offered you up as a bait and you were just not ready for it.
No, it
So
wasn't.
So do you guys have a super specific scary or physical? Like, have you ever had physical marks or physically felt, or like, do you have an isolated experience that's like your most scariest? Even if it wasn't together?
Yeah. I float between mine. You go ahead and do yours.
well, see, because I was thinking I have a physical story, but it's not technically scary.
Yeah.
I mean, so like it's most people would think it's horrifyingly scary, but we were out at Melbourne Manor, and there is one of the spirits that's there all the time. He's called the Shadow Man, and he's my buddy at this point. I've took the time to learn his story. I know he's not dangerous as long as you're nice to him. He's a good guy. And so I make a point every time I'm there to go down and sit outside his room. And so we were there one night and I went down. I have a tendency to wander off myself. It's just because I don't mean to. I just disappear. Anyways, took off, sitting outside his room, and I don't know what happened. Next thing I know, I'm kind of like jerking myself awake and I'm thinking, holy crap, I fell asleep, you know? And I'm thinking, okay, I didn't tell Chris where I went. I don't have a clue how long I've been gone. And that was weird. I better go back, make sure everybody knows where I'm at, and I'm okay.
So you lost time.
Yeah, like that's not a normal thing for me. I don't normally let my guard down enough to fall asleep, but I am comfortable in Melbourne, so I suppose it could happen. But I go to pick myself up off the floor and go back down to the room where everybody else is, and it takes everything I have to pick myself up off the floor and gather my stuff and walk down this hallway back to where I'm going. I'm just absolutely drained of energy and freezing, which anybody who knows me, I don't get freezing. I'm warm-blooded all the time. So we get back and I can't snap out of it. I can't get my energy back. I can't wake up. I can't get warm. And we end up leaving because I'm like, something's wrong. So we end up leaving. And I was at lunch with my mom a couple days later, and she's kind of looking at me at the booth that's sitting across from her. And she says, you have a handprint on your arm. I'm like,
And as the new boyfriend at the time, that doesn't bode well for me at all.
but I get to looking at it. I actually came across a picture when I was looking for pictures. And you can see somebody had grabbed my arm from behind. The four fingers were in front and the thumb was in the back. You could see the handprint. And I'm like, well, that obviously couldn't have been me. Even if I was sitting like this, that's not the right angle. And I can't get maneuvered like that. So I didn't think a whole lot of it. We were heading back to Melbourne pretty shortly after that. We are lucky enough to get into Melbourne multiple times a year. So I went back down and I was sitting outside Shadow Man's hallway again. And I said, buddy, I need to ask you something. I said, last time I was here, something happened. I said, and I still don't know what happened, but I left with a handprint. What happened? And he starts saying, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. He says, something happened to you and I was just trying to help.
Oh.
So I think what happened is in the room next to his, there is another spirit that's in there that is not as friendly. I can't even think what they call him.
We just call him the dizzy guy because that's a very common like phenomenon.
Vertigo, dizziness,
Yeah.
sick to the stomach. He likes to play with people's energy. He likes to take people's energy. And I honestly think what happened is I let my guard down too much. I was too comfortable sitting there talking to him. I let my guard down and he saw his opening and he took it. And I think that that's what happened to me. And my friend is like, something's wrong with her. Wake up, wake up. And that's what snapped me out of it. But that's where the psychic abilities come in because the communication I had with him was all psychically. so many people could have walked away from that situation going, I got attacked. I have a handprint on my arm. And the reality of the situation is he was helping me. That's where that handprint came from. He didn't know he is mentally challenged, but also spirits have a hard time controlling their own strength. You know, he never meant to hurt me, but yeah, I ended up with a huge handprint on my arm heading out of there. So very physical experience, but it wasn't scary after we figured out what had happened, other than I'm more careful around Mr. Dizzy Man at this point.
My story, I did actually get scared shitless. And this is like kind of compounded by the fact that this was my first, I guess maybe 3 years, like doing the investigation thing full time. So actually I started back when I was like 15. I've done a whole bunch of old Hans Holzer books. Who anybody doesn't know who that is. One of like the original paranormal investigators back in the 70s, early parapsychologist. But I started getting a lot into his work, and I was like, okay, people are like actually looking into this stuff. This sounds like a scientific thing, not just like a weird thing I grew up with. And I, started going out, and some of it was like silly, like teenager stuff. I'd go to like the local cemeteries, or anecdotes over the years of trying to break into old prisons and being chased out by screams and stuff like that. But started about 2011, I got like really serious into this, and a couple years after that, I actually started taking like more house calls, doing more residential stuff. And it was the first like business that me and my team at the time had been called into. It's this old schoolhouse, is now a bar out in the middle of nowhere in Illinois. And I actually just got to revisit recently, and that was kind of a nice little like trip down memory lane for me. But there, the business owner at the time, and I'll refrain from saying the place just because it's under new ownership, and I don't know if they want that kind of publicity, but the owner at the time, he's walking us through it. He's telling us, the stairs. So there's two entrances to the building, and there's these stairs that go up to the second floor, and big open area on the ground floor. And he's like, oh, we hear footsteps going up and down these stairs all the time. And everyone's like, okay, residual haunting on the steps as kids go to class and stuff, et cetera, et cetera. And he's like, things moving in the attic, things moving in my office. And whoever's down in the basement, because it's always some guy in the basement, whoever's in the basement just isn't friendly. He's pulling people's hair. He's killing the lights when they're in the middle of doing something on like the far end of the basement. Just not a pleasant fellow. And naturally, with me being one with lower self-preservation instincts, I'm the one that's in the basement by myself about halfway through our investigation. So at the time, my team was me, my dad, and my brother. And my dad and my brother are 2 floors up, and I'm down in the basement by myself, trying to elicit some sort of response. So at the time, my hair was like down to my shoulders, and I was like, you want to pull some hair? I've got hair to pull. I was usually like the slowest to run. So if I wanted to like poke at something, I'd like get a response. So I mentioned like the glow stick brought back a little bit of magic for me, because it was like, that's something that moved. That's something I can't dispute. Like I saw that.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also twice as terrifying when stuff does start happening that is very physical, and it doesn't seem like it's with friendly or just interactive intent. So I'm down there with a night vision camera, a standard just like digital still camera, and my audio recorder. And I'm down there maybe 15 minutes, and both cameras die on me. And very commonly accepted idea in the world of paranormal research, obviously ghosts aren't like us. They can't take in food. They don't use calories to, traverse this world. They have to pull their energy from somewhere else. And typically it's our electronic devices. So I was like, okay, you're obviously pulling energy because these are fresh batteries. Is there something you're doing trying to interact with me? And not too soon after I asked that question, a milk cap flies by my head. And I know the guy, like some of it in the back of my head's already like, I know the guy who's down here isn't the friendliest. This wasn't obviously a very friendly interaction, so I'm just going to get a little closer to the steps.
He doesn't lack complete self-preservation. It's just not top of his list.
So I'm getting closer to the bottom of the steps, and I'm at this point realizing that my eyes are the only eyes down there. And I'm just kind of running EVP, and I'm like, hey, is there anybody down here? Like, you pulled my batteries. What were you trying to show me? And I hear this. There's heating vents in the middle of the basement, and they go further into the basement or towards the bottom of the stairs, which is where I was sitting. And obviously, I'm not ready for this. And it's the middle of June, so there's no reason. There's no expansion, contraction in the heating vents. There's no reason that things should be happening. And I'm asking, is this you? And it bangs louder, and it's quickering its way up the vents. And now it's coming my direction. And I'm starting to panic just a little bit. So I'm reaching for my walkie-talkie, and I get my dad, my brother on the horn, and I'm like, hey, guys, my cameras are dead. Stuff's banging down here. And my dad gets back. Okay, I'm sending your brother down. Oh, good, I'm safe. Apparently, what was heard was I don't have a camera, and that was it. Because my brother, being the brave sod that he is, I see him at the top of the stairs, and I'm relieved. My brother's here. I've got backup. I see a little fear in his eyes. He throws this brand new $250 camera down the stairs to me, and he is going like the freak.
Yeah. He was scared.
So I have this new camera, and I'm going around with the camera. And one of the claims that they had was, and it's actually what kind of inspired them to actually call us, was there's this explosion. A CO2 tank that they had in the basement that they used to move their beer lines along just exploded, and they had sent it into their distributor, and they said there was no real plausible explanation for that. And actually, fast forward several years, I work in the beer industry now, and I've had the opportunity to look at some of these stuff, and what they were describing, at least from what I can remember, it doesn't sound normal to me. But basically, I'm over where the CO2 tanks are, and this camera dies on me. And I'm okay. Last time, you did some pretty wild stuff when you used my camera batteries. And it does seem like you want me down here. And this is one of the 2 times this phrase has come to bite me in the ass. I'll tell you what, I'll go if you can do something to impress me. Yeah, that's that's the face a lot of people make. So from where I'm standing, I can see to the other side of the stairs, and there's this 2-handed push cart, like a dolly. And it's got a little lean to it. And we're humans. Our eyes are fantastic things, but on occasion they can be fooled. And I'm like, it's low lights. It's just my eyes playing tricks on me. There's no way this thing is moving a little bit. And as soon as I had myself convinced that there's no way this dolly is moving, it was like somebody took it by the handles and just flicked it to the ground as hard as they could. There's no video to this because, like I said, they killed the cameras, but I still have that audio recording. It is a string of profanity that would make a sailor blush.
So there's a teacher who was really unhappy about that place being turned into a bar.
And that was kind of it always seems to be like some sort of stuck-up teacher in these places.
Yeah.
It's not a...
Yeah. There's a teacher who probably had some pretty, well, I don't know when that bar was around, but if it was, or when it was a school, if it was during the Prohibition era, then alcohol
Catholic school
totally be off the table. But yeah, there's a pretty pissed off teacher who does not like that being a bar.
Mid to late 50s, I believe, is when it was opened.
Oh, okay.
But that Prohibition thing is definitely carried over throughout the years, like they're selling.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
And even
you
if it wasn't during that time, if it was a school, I could see somebody easily saying, this isn't a place for alcohol, this is for kids, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
you two
Sorry.
seem really in tune, with like energy. You clearly can sense, and you seem very gifted. I'm curious, this is my big question so growing up, I was very similar to you and, Chris as well. And I know Matt had his experiences as well. And I was in tune in the sense that knowing something was with me. I wasn't alone. But as I grew up and I got older, I always wondered, like, I don't get it. What are ghosts, right? And I remember watching That's Incredible when I was a kid. And it's going to age me because I'm a lot older than you guys. But it was about our local town's toy store. It was Toys R Us. And I watched That's Incredible. And they talked about how the guy was searching for the girl. And, it used to be farmland. And he chopped his leg off, and died. And, anyway, long story short, I started to wonder, like, and because it would be the same, they would see the same thing, like a recording over and over. So I was like, well, is it like energy? Is it like a recording, that's like trapped in time and stuck? But as I got even older, I started to think that maybe because time is an illusion that the parallels bleed. And it's just, that incident was so traumatic or so intense or carried so much energy that in this time and space it sort of bleeds into it. And maybe that's why psychically some of us can pick up on it more because we're more sensitive to, the bleeding of time and the layers that are in front of us. Same with like people that talk to the dead, or talk to people who passed over. They're just like talking to another realm, touching base with another realm. So that's kind of the perspective I came to, but I'm curious, what your guys' perspective is on what ghosts are and what is really happening.
And I think it's interesting the way that you pose that, because I think there's truth in both aspects of this. I think 100% you're going to have those situations where it's like a recording. It's the energy of an event that happened that's left its imprint on that location. And it could be something as simple as at 5 o'clock every day, the man walks in his back door, walks straight to his fridge and grabs a beer every day at 5 o'clock, Monday through Friday. And so every
It's me, I'm that ghost.
God, you're creating a ghost. But that could be something simple like that. Or you can look at situations like the Villisca Axe murder house, where that was such a traumatic, high energy driven event that took place there, that in reality, I don't know that the spirits are there very often. I'm not saying that they're not ever there, because we've interacted with them. But I think that the majority of what people feel at that location is that scar that's left behind.
That residual?
That residual haunting that's there. But then you'll have the other side of that where, 100% it's intelligence.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, up to this point, I think we would describing is what a lot of people refer to as that residual haunting.
Like, okay, let's think about everything everywhere all at once, right? Let's imagine that time is an illusion, right? Let's not imagine it. It's supposed to be a thing. So if that's the case, and when we go to a place that is known to be haunted, are we tapped into, is that moment in time just so intense that we pick up on it in that space? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So for me, it like at least the metaphor that I kind of go to this. Imagine just the existence of time, spirit world, whatever, is this just flat surface of water. If I were to take a stone and drop it in that water, you're going to create a ripple that goes outwards. Now, eventually, those ripples fade off into nothing. And I think that's why we don't hear of ghosts of Neanderthals or things like that. And depending on, how intense that experience was, that ripple's going to be bigger.
The bigger the rock, the bigger the ripple.
Or if I'm dropping small rocks repeatedly, because I think, that example of a guy getting off work, he's going and grabbing a beer, being that repetitive thing, that's just a bunch of small rocks, but it's going to eventually create bigger ripples because you're displacing more of that water. And it also speaks very true to the fact that just because something is a haunting doesn't mean it's negative in any way.
No.
Right.
Um,
It's intense.
yeah, it's just it's a side effect of life. It's that thing we leave behind.
Then psychically, how would you explain Kelly's experience where a spirit grabbed her arm? If it was not a recording of time, would you say that maybe you were between realms where that energy existed and you were there together? Because psychically you maybe were in that realm and maybe he was in your realm. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, how would you explain when they touch us or when like that?
Yeah, I think you described it as like frequencies, and I think that's a good way of explaining it.
Yeah, and it actually kind of falls into this, and I hate putting things into boxes because in the grand scheme of things, we don't know anything for sure about this paranormal research thing. But if there's one or two like sensibilities I can wrap my head around, it's that what we were talking about before is something we call residual hauntings, where this is something we refer to more as intelligent, and that is more, depending on what your sensibilities want to call it, an earthbound spirit. It's a person that doesn't have the meat suit here, but some or all of their consciousness is still around.
And they are just people. You know, we do presentations quite often when we're traveling, and we call it Finding Happy in a Haunting. And one of the things that we try to help everybody remember is that these are people. It's not a what, it's a who. And like Chris said, they may have lost that meat suit, but they're still just people. Talk to them like you would people. Treat them with respect like you would people, you know. But 99% of what you're going to run into, they're not bad. They're not evil. They don't mean you harm. They're just, I don't know how to phrase it other than living their life. Their afterlife.
Right.
They're unliving their afterlife.
Yeah, the Tibetan Buddhists call that in between a bardo. And you can reside in like different levels of bardos, right? Some people may call it purgatory. It just depends on the demographic that you're speaking to. But yeah, I definitely believe that earthbound spirits who may not know how to move on, you know, to the ethers, to the afterlife, what that may be. But for me personally, I feel like it is energy. And I love the fact that you said meat suit, because I've been saying meat suit for years, because that's essentially, yeah.
We're not the only crazy people.
It makes me feel good. But I want to.
As a matter of fact, on our website, one of my blogs, I specifically refer to meat suits. Like, yeah, love that you said that. But this is all it is. You know,
I'm gonna potentially ruin it for you though, because I hadn't considered this. We were doing a presentation. I said meat suit, and then somebody said like Lady Gaga in 2012, and now I feel like I need to find a new phrase.
Oh no, Lady Gaga used meat suit. Oh,
yeah, she ruined it.
I had no idea. Here we thought we were being like cool and special. But
you know.
So I saw your guys' TikTok, one that you have pinned, and it was really interesting to me. It was your Ouija board TikTok.
Oh yeah. So
yeah.
I love
when I
it.
was young, and I mean young, I was driving, so I was 18 at least. I was late for work. I lost my keys, and me and my friends had made our own Ouija board out of like cardboard and like a clear plastic case with a little piece of paper that made a circle so you can see what letter. And I was like, I can't find my keys. And I went in my room and I'm like, I'm going to try it. Right. And it said the word orange and it said the word wood, and it kept saying it over and over. And I got mad. I was like, you know what? Screw this. I'm going to be late for work. I don't like being late. So I threw it down, pissed off at it. I walked out into the living room. I went to the wooden shelf and grabbed my keys with the orange keychain off of it and walked to the door, and I said, oh, because that's where I always put them. I always put them in the same place. And I was like, that's the wooden shelf, and this is my keys with the orange keychain. And I was like, wow, you know. But your guys' TikTok with the light up
Ouija board is cool.
Yeah.
To the audience a little bit about how that works.
That is 100% a Chris creation. He had a little bit of spare
I
time.
had some rare free time and extra wood in the garage. I don't cope with boredom.
Oh yeah, that.
So yeah, basically it's everybody goes to a Ouija board because it does like I intentionally gave that aesthetic because it just looks nice.
It looks really cool.
But I also compared a lot to like seen Stranger Things, the blinky Christmas lights over the letters, a lot closer to that. So the lights are actually each individually basically a very sensitive vibration sensor or a cat toy. The other cat toys is what they actually are, because no piece of like very few pieces of technology that uses paranormal investigators were meant for this process. But we've been using them for quite a while just for that very sensitive vibration sensor, because we ask, can you touch something, can you move something? Something like, yeah, it's very small. We're probably not going to notice that unless, you know, we're already hyper fixated on it. Or these is just a nice, good visual cue.
So you would ask out loud and then wait for it to light the letters up. Is that what would happen?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, if you know, we used to do it just like this one means yes, this one means no. We were getting a lot of good responses, and yeah, just like how can we expand on that? So gave them the whole alphabet so that they had the opportunity to be able to spell in life, like read, write, spell in life. They'd be able to write out messages, and we've had some very interesting results with it.
Yeah, we but yeah, the board itself is all hand drawn. Chris drew everything, painted everything, designed the whole thing. But I'll let you explain, because I wasn't even a part of it. I got to hear about it afterwards. Dang it.
So with this, it requires a lot of patience. Just because it does take a lot of time for them to interact with each one individually, and a lot of times it's honestly very nonsensical. Like as far as like solid results, are like, I don't want to say maybe 40% of the time. There's one of the first times we used it, we host a lot of public investigations because we think it's cool to have our own experiences, so to be able to facilitate somebody else's first experiences. Always very cool.
Give them a chance to come in, investigate a place they may not have gotten into on their own. Lets them be with somebody who has some experience doing this, and then we've got all the equipment for them to use too, so they can like try things out, see what they like, what they don't like before they go and invest their own money.
So yeah, we're upstairs. Actually, this is Malvern Manor again, and I've got a small group, and we're all hanging out around the board. And I'm gonna preface this with there's a lady in the group whose name is Buffy, which is it's kind of a different name, but whatever. So we're standing around the board, not much is happening, and the bee lights up. Everybody's like, oh, something happened. This is cool. And almost immediately the U lights up. And they're like, oh my God, it's starting to spell things. And then the F lights up, and everybody's starting to get really excited because they know they're spelling something. I see Buffy because she's like 2 feet away from me going like this.
Now, preface this whole thing, the poor woman had just broke her foot. She was in a boot.
There's no running away.
Couldn't walk very well. They're upstairs.
So yeah, for everybody else in the room, it was a very cool experience. But for Buffy, not. It's weird.
And it finished spelling her name.
Oh yeah, it finished spelling her
whole
name.
Crazy.
Yeah, it was very, very cool. Like as a sciencey guy result for the board. It's just a cool experience, and it was one of those weird examples where we do host these events and everybody comes out because they want that weird, spooky experience. And almost everybody panics when the weird, spooky stuff starts happening.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's another one of those situations, like you were saying, Carissa, where you try to logic yourself out of it, but there is a room full of people who watched that board spell out a name that's not a usual name. Right. We can't control that. We can't make those balls go off, especially not the order we want it to, you know.
Right. I have a Ouija board experience that a little bit different than yours, but still kind of confirms it. So I'd never played with the Ouija board growing up, just, never really had an interest. I grew up in a house where I saw shadow people. Like I felt like I already had enough of that around me, right? And so this guy that I was dating, I was hanging out with him at his mom's house. His sister was there, and I read cards. I don't do tarot, but I do playing cards. So I was reading cards for everybody. And, we start talking about the Ouija, and the guy that I was dating, his mom was like, I have one inside. Do you want to play with the Ouija board? And I'm like, well, yeah, sure. I've never played with one before. Let's go ahead and do it. And so she brings out the Ouija and nothing happens. The planchette doesn't move. I kind of even expected maybe somebody to play a joke and move it, you know. Nothing happened. And we were at it for about 45 minutes. And so I was like, well, there you have it. They don't like the Ouija board. They don't talk, you know, they don't want to talk about it or talk through it, whatever. And I just went about my life. And 5 years later, my grandma comes to me and scolds me from the other side about playing with the Ouija board. And she said, I was there that night. And the reason why nothing happened is because I did not let it. She was like, you were not in a really good area. You were not around good people with good energy. And so I blocked anything from coming through. Now, when I got that message, there is no way I was no longer in touch with those people. I was 2 hours away from where I was when I played with there was no way that message could have got to me, or, was faked. Like, the person who gave me that message was a complete stranger.
They wouldn't have known.
Wouldn't have known me up until that day we met. She was a psychic medium. And so I just knew. I'm like, oh, shit. You know, it's just one of those things that just blows your mind. And you're like,
Oh, yeah.
This is for real. This really is for real.
Well, since what you're saying, you know, they were blocking negative energy, you know, for you, whatnot. So I would want to ask Chris and Kelly. So tell me what you think about this, and because it can get really serious at times. I was in a school. It was an old school, but it was where we had our YMCA program. And there is a preschool room that's open year round. And the teachers would tell me about how they would clean the room at the end of the day and come back in the morning as if they've been played with. And then, you know, other things, we heard other things too. But in this room is a small little kitchen. And it had like one of those flapper doors. So it was always open. You just go through the flapper door. But the kitchen was really small. And the sink was like in the back. And the stove was off to the left. And somebody new was there. And I was in the kitchen getting ready to boil water because we were going to do tie-dye. And so my friend comes in and I start telling him the stories that I've heard that go on at the school. And while I'm standing there facing the flapper door telling the story, you know, I hadn't done anything yet. And I realized I'm talking too much, which I do. We all know I talk too much. And I was like, I got to get back to work. So I turned over to the stove and I shit you not, they freaking turned the stove on full flame while my back was turned the whole time talking. I never turned the stove on. I never even put the water in the bowl yet. But it was like confirming that everything I was telling them was true. So I turned around and the flame was fully. I mean, that's dangerous. Like, have you had dangerous things like that happen? And what is your take on the fact that, you know, yeah, maybe, you know, time is bleeding, or maybe there's consciousness that is stuck in this realm, but like, what's your take on that?
I mean, I would honestly think that it wasn't something that they had done thinking, oh, this is dangerous. I think they could have seen it as, we're trying to help her. We're trying to maybe not realizing that it wasn't full of water. So we're going to turn the heat on so she doesn't get behind schedule. Or maybe we're going to turn this on in hopes that she recognizes, hey, you're supposed to be boiling water, get back to work, you know. The majority of the spirits that we run into, they're in locations that they choose to be in because it meant something to them. And a lot of times they just want to help, you know. I mean, we had a spirit in the house that I grew up in. My first year I had a son, I lived at home. They'd tuck him in at night, you know, and it was just a helpful thing. I don't think most of the time they're out to hurt you, even the ones that are ornery. I mean,
if we're, you know, approaching this from the idea that this, you know, spirits may interact with our just people at the end of the day. At the grand scheme of things, how many genuinely actually what you would describe as an evil person have you met in your life? And unfortunately, we all have the misfortune of meeting an a-hole or two throughout this little path we call life. But in the grand scheme of things, our human experience is, generally speaking, a good one. It's, you're trying to be the best person you can be, surrounded by people trying to be the best person they can be. And I think that's just something that doesn't necessarily stop when, the body expires. It's, they're still just kind of doing them, and, we have our own, negative qualities. Sometimes those are what comes through, and that's not good. But as a general rule, people are good. So in the grand scheme of things, the spirits we interact with, they're going to be.
Love that perspective. That just got me right here.
And I guess I was thinking, like, when she was sharing the story, why would they have turned that on? It made me think of Rebecca. So our friend Rebecca Williamson owns this quaint little haunted location wedding venue.
It's another place you can't market as creepy.
Yeah. It's called Cambry House and Farm. It's in Nauvoo, Illinois, and it's just this adorable little house. But she's told us, and it's happened to other people when they're with her, that she'll be coming up to the door with her arms just full of stuff, thinking, I'm never going to get this door open, and the door unlocks and opens and swings open for her. And we've seen other things where somebody's, or heard stories where they see their kid walking towards the back door, and you see the door just swing shut so the kid can't go out. I mean, it's simple little things that they're doing to try to help us out. Now, always? No, maybe not always. I mean, there's definitely times that lights have gone off, or it's like, this is not the good time for you to turn the lights off on me. I have no idea where I'm at. But I don't know that I've ever really been. No, that's not true. I was gonna say in a situation where I thought this spirit was like trying to hurt me or scare me, but trying to hurt me, no. Trying to scare me, yes.
So essentially just like Casper the Friendly Ghost.
For the most part, I mean,
friendly may be pushing it sometimes. I mean, because there's the maintenance man at Edinburgh, or
it's Casper the human ghost, and humans are messy and we're complicated, and we try to do good most of the time, but sometimes we're just not having a good day. I'm going to be a bit, and people are just going to have to deal with that.
And that's the whole thing I think about this. God help the person who has to deal with me as a spirit, because some days you're going to get a great person, and other days you're going to get a raging bitch. And
well, you two
the odds be ever in your favor.
You two are pretty awesome. I would never consider either one of you raging bitches. So on that note, Travelers Moon, you come in, people call you guys? Is that what it is? They call you guys, you come in. So what is your mission? When they call you in, are you coming in to like help rid the home? Are you coming in to help see if it's legit, that maybe there is paranormal activity? Like, what is your mission, and who would call you, and why would they call you? Or, kind of like Ghostbusters, I guess.
Ghostbusters. So our house calls are actually very few and far between these days. We do a lot of consultation work with like local groups if they need it. I mean, back in the day, because I don't you did a ton.
I did some time to time.
You still a lot of house
it's
calls.
Different for a single woman to go.
Yeah, fair. But everybody's a little bit different. You have some people that they just want validation. They're not crazy. As far as get these out of my house, I'm not an exterminator, and these are people with free will. This is their house too. Just because they're not the ones with bodies living in it right now doesn't mean they don't have some sort of a right to be there. Because if anything, they've been there longer.
Yeah.
And
it'd be the same as me walking in and saying, Matt, you no longer get to stay in your house. Get out. But it doesn't work that way. It's, nobody has that power or authority.
And some people just have. I started and this is part of the why I started walking a little bit further away from the house calls. Was I firmly believe there's such things as paranormal Munchausen syndrome, where you can have a reasonable explanation of things happening in your home, but they want the damn ghost, and they're going to go to 3 other teams that's like until they find the people that'll be like, oh yeah, your house is definitely haunted.
It's not the case. Yeah,
the goal now is for us.
It's to help remember. We want to help try to make sure that the spirits themselves are not forgotten, that the locations are not forgotten, that the stories are not forgotten, because how much of our history has been lost because the stories are not still being shared. They're not still a part of somebody's memory. another big point for us is really just trying to help make sure that we're understanding the truth of a situation. You know, if we're going to a location where there's a story of someone who's just mean and ornery, I'm that person who's going to want to try to figure out why. Why are you mean and ornery? Is there a reason? Is that not the truth of the situation and it's just being misinterpreted? Can we treat you better in your afterlife so you don't have to respond the way that you do? You know,
Right.
Because I think a lot of times people get scared of the unknown. We get scared of the things that we can't see or that we don't understand. So of course it has to be bad. It has to be mean. It has to be evil. And that makes one hell of a sexy story for it to be that, you know, and in reality, it's just Bob living his life, wanting to be left alone and, you know, get off my porch.
Yeah. I have like 5 questions here. I can rapid fire them.
Yeah.
Dude, I love the documentary. Y'all have a great
Thank
chemistry.
you.
What was it
Extremely-
titled again?
A Night in Renwich.
Renwick Mansion. Yep.
So I had a couple of questions. I'll just go through them and y'all can answer any one y'all want to. What is a moon spinner, by the way?
Oh, that's on you. I suck at explaining this.
So moon spinner is a myth or a legend that I grew up with. I actually got it from my mom. And it's a story that she's told me since I was a little bitty girl. Basically, like when we're born, our lives, our paths are cast out in front of us like the reflection of a moon on a pond. And as we go through our life, that path starts dwindling like a moon will dwindle until that experience, that existence is over. And then the new moon starts again and you cast it and it's the moon spinning.
Interesting.
So it's a nickname that honestly I started using as a username and it just kind of stuck. And so now half the people who know me as Moon Spinner.
Cool. I love it. I wanted to touch on ITC.
That's all you.
Go for it.
Yeah, so ITC is a paranormal investigation technique that stands for Instrumental Trans Communication. And if anybody watches like any of the ghost hunting shows, any paranormal content, those are your spirit boxes. Those random noise generators that on occasion we think maybe ghosts talk through. And they're, I would argue, kind of divisive in the paranormal community. They are definitely the most exciting thing to have with you because on the times that they are perceived to work, it is easily one of the most exciting things because like this is as close as we can have to being a person without abilities to having like a real-time conversation.
And it's
with
instant
the other
gratification. It's not watching 160
Yeah.
hours worth of footage.
Instant gratification. That's honestly the biggest part of it.
How does it work? So, because I didn't get an opportunity to watch your documentary yet.
Yeah.
So what is
So there's a few different, I guess, methods to making an ITC device work. The first was like the original spirit box. There's a lot of like local legend, local folklore of when I heard spirit's voice coming through the radio.
Mhm.
And this is kind of expansion on that. So the original spirit box, the model is called the SB7. And basically what someone did is they snipped the sweep wire, the wire that goes to the sweep on your radio. So that it's
turning the channel.
constantly going through radio stations, typically about 4 second.
creating white
Right.
noise?
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're ever watching the shows, if you watch the shows and you hear that device, it's going every time it makes that noise, it's changing the station.
Mhm.
Not yet.
So then the idea is that, and again, I can't say for certain how this works for them. All I know is the result that I've been able to see on this side. They're either manipulating those sounds inside the device to say things, or they're actually manipulating the vibrational patterns before they hit our ears, turning into something that we're able to hear. So it's either a broken radio, or in recent years, and I'm going to preface this with, don't trust everything that's potentially
Hang in there, folks. We'll
A phone
justify our
app?
next thing.
So back, like, had you asked me, like, 6, 7 years ago, if anything in your phone was good for ghost hunting, I wouldn't have told you. So, because back in the day, it was just Ghost Radar. These were apps that were literally designed for teenagers to scare themselves.
Yep. And 95% of what's out there, is still for entertainment purposes only.
That being said, there are some cool people out there that are trying to, make a little headway. And so, for example, we use a couple developed by a guy named Keith Weldon. I want to say Sacramento or San Francisco, somewhere out in Cali.
Somewhere warm.
He basically, instead of a broken radio, he's taking a randomizer algorithm and sound banks full of phone names and
phonetic sounds.
So not necessarily the words "hello, Kelly," but the enunciation of the letter "oh." And obviously, nothing is mathematically impossible, but the odds of that reply,
right? Because in order for it to even get something as simple as hello, there's multiple phonetic sounds that have been put together to form that word. So if you guys do ever watch like the documentary or our lives or anything, you'll notice we tend to kind of shy away from like the little one word, one syllable answers. We're looking for things that have more syllables, that they have to say more than one word. And you'll probably mean more than Chris. You'll watch me start asking a question that I know is going to be a yes or no, and I rephrase it so it's not a yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
It's I was trying to like compare things to other things I've noticed, and for me, it's when you're doing a reading with, say, oracle cards or runes or etc. You're relying on what is perceived on our end as randomness to give us a message from spirit, and it's kind of like that electronically.
But the problem with it's amazing, and we've had amazing results. But like with everything else, there is that human bias, that human influence that can be put in there as well. So one of the things that we'll do to try to take that human bias out of this is we'll do something called the Estes experiment. Estes method. Estes method.
Yeah, it came out of Estes Park, Colorado, so it was just kind of adopted that name.
So what it is basically it's taking one of the people and depriving them of their normal senses and removing the bias. So luckily, it's normally Chris that has that happen. He will put on a blindfold. We give him blindfold, noise canceling headphones. And then he's running one of those the ITC devices through the headphones. And the reason that we do this is because when we ask a question, something as simple as what color is Chris's shirt, everybody is listening for the word black. So even if you hear something that goes, well, they're going, oh, I heard it, it's black. We're taking that bias out of there because now I'm asking the questions. Chris can't hear what the questions are. So if I say, what color is Chris's shirt? And he says black, now we know that we're really getting that communication back. And like, we've had some amazing experiences. There's one of our lives that we've shared. It's on the Travelers Moon page, right?
Oh, yeah. And pretty much all of our sessions are out on page.
The Cambry House one is
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so there was one of the lives that we were doing that was out of the Cambry House, and it was probably to date still one of our best Estes methods. We were just getting back-to-back answers and things that were completely relevant. And even to the point like I had been doing the live, but we were running it live through Facebook and I was watching the chat and he hadn't heard anything for a while. And one of the guys that's well known at this location pops into chat. And I'm like, hey, Chad. And he goes, dairy. And his brain goes dairy, like, ooh, cow, dairy, And then a second later, he gets Chad, and he kind of pulls an earphone out. He's like, is Chad Dairy here? I'm like, no, but he's just jumped into chat. How do you deny something like that? Was that the same night, though, that you got the little flicky flick? That was cool. That was during Estes.
Yeah.
So during that same session, and this is where you can cross from everything happening all together. I mean, he's sitting on the bed and we're filming it, and he has a hoodie or something on that's got strings hanging from it. And he's sitting there and he's leaning forward a little bit, so they're dangling. And clear as day, you can see somebody, it looked like somebody came out and went like that, and that thing goes whew, and drops back down. Like,
Wow.
Somebody hit it. Something hit it. And the interesting part of that is there's a spirit at this location. Her name is Eglantine. She's a little 9-year-old girl who passed away, not at the house, but she is buried on the location. She loves anything that swings. Like, I'll make sure to have my pendulum when we go there because she just loves anything that swings. I'm positive it was her. And I came up and went, ooh, this swings. So,
No.
yeah.
I have one last one. I don't know if anything like this happened to you guys, so I want to know what you think, because some of the things you said kind of have answered my question on this already. So when I was a teenager in high school, I had an editorial column in my newspaper, my school newspaper, and my friend and I had always heard about the ghost in D Hall, right? And we have Sonnet Troll, where it could detect it going through all the rooms, and they have alarms where they picked it up going from one room, all the classrooms. And then another one was where a Coke machine was moved across the bathroom to the other side of the bathrooms, and they were like, this is odd. So they were moving it back. And as they were moving it back, they seen, a spirit walk by the other side of the room. So we decided we're going to investigate prior to our school being there. And it was all cherry fields. It was farmland. And so my friend and I did like the backstory, and we were digging really deep into it and enjoying the process, but we were digging deep. And I don't know if we were getting close to something or what, but I went home on my break one day. I was supposed to have a meeting with the family because across the street, behind the liquor store at the time, there was a tree that belonged to that family, and all of the ashes had been put into that tree over the years. And so I went home. I was taking a nap, because us teenagers sleep too much, and I was dreaming about everything, but I had sleep paralysis. I couldn't wake up. I couldn't, like, I could hear my phone ringing and I was trying to grab it and I couldn't grab it. And then when I finally pulled out of it, well, while I was in it, I could see a shining light, like in my face, so to speak. But when I finally pulled out of it, I woke up and it was just the light from my window coming through the shades. But I was so scared because of that paralysis in my dream that I'd never had before. And we were so deep into the story, I feel like something was keeping me away from it. So I refused to write any more about the story because, I felt like we were maybe investigating and digging too deep. And my friend in turn ended up making it into a parody, like the ghost in D Hall, and made jokes and, out of it. So like, what is your take on something of that nature? Do you think that maybe there are times that maybe spirits, give you a sign of that nature? Or has anything like that ever happened to you? Like, what do you think about that?
So I get conflicted because I do feel like when we sleep, we are in a kind of a thin place psychically. We're more open to receiving messages, etc. Science, Chris, actually, sleep paralysis is something I've suffered from a few times. And it is an actual, it's a human condition. It's something that our brains do. And it's when wires get crossed just a little bit and the lines between sleep and awake gets a little too blurry. I feel terrible for my mother because I was a medical mess for fair amounts of my life. Like, I contracted West Nile, I had encephalitis, and my brain got swollen. And, I had a staph infection, almost lost my left arm. And there was one point in my life where I had a narcolepsy diagnosis. Grew out of that, which isn't normal for narcolepsy. So it was some 4-letter acronym, but it basically mimicked narcolepsy. Exactly. So I got very familiar with actually the science of sleep study. And I think if we take messages as messages, that's what they were supposed to be, was a message of sorts. But I also am aware of the fact that sleep paralysis is something that, can affect a solid portion of the American population. So I always get conflicted with
well, I
like
had never had it since. It was the only time I had ever had it. So I thought that was unique. I could be wrong.
No, and I mean, it's very possible it happened, but I think that when you're getting sleepy, like Chris was saying, is a perfect time for them to start interacting with you, because like Carissa was saying, it's when our logic gets out of the way. Our brain doesn't say, hey, this can't possibly be real. But like that made me think, between all these stories, to go back to Renwick. I was spending the night at Renwick one night, and I was there all by myself, and I'm up in so the thing about Renwick, that not every location I would do that. No way. There's some locations I won't sleep in just because they don't stop talking and it's too loud. But Renwick is not like that. Mr. Renwick, who's the senior William, was very, very proper, very, no, you know, Wild Bill, although they call him Wild Bill, he wasn't all that wild. He burst his bubble, but they're very, I mean, it's almost like a very protective feeling when I'm there. It's a family thing. I'm their guest. But like, so I was there by myself. I had to be up super early the next morning and taken off from a town an hour and a half away from me. So I'm like, hey, can I stay at the mansion? They're like, sure. So I'm in Wild Bill's room though. And so I may be brave, but I'm not stupid. The hallway light's still on, right? And it's an old house, so there's about that much of a crack below the door. And as I'm laying in his room, I can see with my eyes, see the shadow back and forth across the bottom of the door. And there's an ability comes up. I know it's Wild Bill, and he's out there pacing, trying to decide if he should come into his room or not. And I'm like, dude, it's your room. If you want to come in, come in. But if you're not going to come in, stop pacing. You're scaring the shit out of me. Knock it off, you know? And I'm like, it's your room. Come in if you want to. I don't care. Well, he never came in, but the pacing stopped. So it's like, I think sometimes, and if you have paralysis, probably can't, but when we do get in situations where we're scared, I think a lot of times we need to remember it's as simple as saying, you're scaring me. Can you stop? You know, because it would be the same as if I'm doing something that's making Lori uncomfortable. If she looked at me and said, I'm uncomfortable, knock it off, I'd stop because I'm human. They're human. They're going to stop if they're making us uncomfortable most of the time.
Yeah, I definitely think it was just a sign, you know, maybe you don't need to go any further, or, you know, so I agree.
Yeah.
Probably didn't need to be as scared. I did want to mention, I posted a little while ago, we tried doing live audience so that we could get people to, you know, ask questions and interact with our guests, but we changed our service. We're with Google Meets right now. So I posted it on TikTok if anybody had any questions, and somebody just responded and they had a question for you. So I wanted to validate that.
Yeah.
Regina Kramer asks, coming from someone who's been sensitive since I was a child and who now clears homes, so she goes in and, you know, sages and clears homes, curious how you guys feel when there is a good or bad entity that they are investigating for trying to clear. For me, I feel heat. I know some people feel goosebumps. How do you know when you're dealing with a certain entity? Like, what signs, I guess she's asking, do you get?
I think where, you know, every person is different. I think their presentation and whatever ethereal form they have is going to be a little bit different. So, for example, I know of a lot of people that like, they claim like, oh, I smelled my grandma's perfume.
Right.
If trying to think of any like particular, like for me, and this is one of those, like, it requires a little bit of technology, but if I like, especially the circumstances, right? If I hear the Styxes come sail away, I know that's my shamanic teacher trying to reach out to me. So I think it just very much depends on the person and how they, you know.
And what is it for you when you sense it? Well, you said you do shaman work, so I'm curious. Do you?
It's for me. Like I said, everybody's different, so every spiritual interaction is going to be a little different. I've had some spiritual.
Oh, so you mean like the entities you experience make you feel? Okay, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's always like being someone who sees things. I'm like, if I am catching things out of the corner of my eye, or my eyes being drawn to a particular area for no reason, that's something I'm going to follow. but I try to stay as open as possible. I'm not just going to assume every time I get goosebumps it's something paranormal, because that's also just a sign of your parasympathetic nervous system kicking on. I can't take that as a sign every time.
That makes sense.
And I think a lot of it has to do with, think of how you interact with people. You can walk up to a person, you go, ooh, you've got great energy. You make me happy. I want to be around you. And there's other people you walk up to and you're like, ooh, I can't get out of this room quick enough, you know? And it's people, these are people, they just don't have their meat suits. And I think that a lot of times it's what kind of vibe are they giving? How are they interacting with you? What words might they be saying? Are they responding quickly and friendly to your equipment, or are they pushing things over? I mean, I can't even think of situations where they're responding negatively all that much, because it doesn't happen that often that we have that negative response. But I've had spirits make me feel both warm and cold, and they weren't good or bad. It's not like I can go, oh, it's heat, so it's always bad, or oh, it's cold, it's always good. I've had it go.
I think the biggest takeaway from you two is today is the fact that what you just said about how they're real people. So I think my biggest takeaway, and it helps me reflect on, you know, all the fear I had growing up, because I was really scared. I think really what was happening, and maybe it's happening to others, is what Chris was saying about the sense you get, is sometimes it could be your own. So really you're becoming aware of that sensitivity to other realms or other, you know, energies that you can't see with your eyes always, or that just feel different than, you know, somebody in the same room with you. And if we could change our perspective and maybe not be scared and understand the fact that, you know, all realms exist at the same time, same place. And when we walk, they might physically be in front of us, or they might not physically see them in front of us, but they're still there. And we look at it, like you said, Kelly, where we approach the energy like people, you know, like we would anybody else, or even animals, maybe, you know.
Exactly.
Didn't have that fear, and maybe we would be able to genuinely sense it in a whole new way. So I think that I'm going to take that with me today, because, you know, when I go into the bathrooms and I said, I don't want to be scared. I think I'm going to try to feel it a little differently.
We have this one location that we go to down in Southern Iowa. It's called the Mason House Inn, and it still functions as an inn. It's a bed and breakfast. And there's one room that has a guy that just hangs out in the bathroom, and he's not bad, but he makes me uncomfortable, because he's one of those that he just watches. He's very intently watching you. Like stop, just stop. Okay. You're making me weird, you know, but like, I have to go to the bathroom on occasion. So I'll walk into the bathroom, like, out, time to go, you know, and it's just like, it cracked me up, because it's really like, hey, you're great to hang out in the bathroom, but this is my space. Go. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's the majority of the time they're just people, and we try to remind people, like, talk to them like they're people too, you know, because I think about how weird it must be if I'm hanging out in a location and someone's finally there to talk to me, and they get in my face and go, "What is your name?" I'm gonna back up and go, "Well, it sure as hell isn't screaming," you know.
Like, hello, is this thing on? Hello,
yeah, you know, it's like. So like we try to have conversations with them that's just like, hey, I'm Kelly, what's your name? You know, and just talk to them like normal people. And it's like, God help, if you ever come watch us in person, don't sit in the front row, because I will use you as examples. And
well, you know, it's funny watching you in person, because I see that you guys do go other places, and I'm headed to New Orleans this weekend.
Yeah,
it's my favorite place. So
I was thinking about you guys, and we've had this conversation with Carissa in New Orleans and some of her experiences. And so actually, who knows, maybe I'll go into a bathroom in New Orleans. It feels a little
there's definitely some history in those bathrooms.
Well, there's a lot of haunted here too.
So I just a couple weekends ago, we have a town here called Jerome. I'm not sure.
You do.
So I got to stay at the Jerome Grand. Please. Exactly. I got to stay at the Jerome Grand, and I got 2 rooms, 31 and 33. 32 is the most haunted room. in that hotel. There's been 4 suicides there where they've just gone over the balcony.
Mhm.
And I think another one was by like self-inflicted gunshot wound. But great. I love it. Great.
Well, I had more questions, but we can
Yeah,
do it.
no, go
tomorrow.
ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah. Is Bigfoot interdimensional? He is, right? Bigfoot's interdimensional.
I got
It's the only
so.
way he exists.
But I am very open. I've personally never had a Bigfoot experience, so I'm going to remain skeptical until then. But my dad grew up out, like he didn't grow up, but he lived for quite a while outside of Boise, Idaho, and he's had experiences, and I trust his word. And I'm having a harder time with the Aper theory because we had to have found something by now, right?
Yeah, that's
So,
the part I struggle with. is that we haven't found
Interdimensional,
anything.
like I've heard somebody say,
only-
like where aliens send, like this is basically their jail. So like how Britain would send people to Australia or the state of Georgia here in the States, like that's what they do to aliens. And like
Yeah.
But
now,
they send them here. They send aliens here, like for jail.
yeah, and that's why we can't find bodies, because once they die, they send them back up. And what's the coolest thing about that whole thing is that if that's the case, if these are aliens, we're getting visited by freaking Wookiees, and I am the most excited person ever.
Well, then, like Matt said, it is interdimensional because they'll walk in, they'll be here for a minute, and walk back out.
Yeah, I like the theory too, though, that maybe it's like the spirits of a Neanderthal. Like it's that
Yeah, it is like a very brief, like
the word's escaping me, not reflection. The
Ghost?
yeah, I just gone. It's gone. But yeah, like what if it's just a Neanderthal that we're seeing that video play back over and over? But how freaking cool is it? Side note, if you guys ever want to guess that can do cryptid stuff, that's absolutely fascinating. Nash Hoover. He's
Say that again.
phenomenal. Nash Hoover.
Okay.
He is a cryptid guy.
he has to do a lot of very ghosty stuff these
Fascinating.
days.
Yeah, but he's fascinating to listen to. Like we've had him on when we used to do our podcast. We'd have him on as guest multiple times, and I just sit there like, tell me this, tell me this, tell me this.
No, isn't it so fascinaning? I
Oh,
love
so much
cryptids.
fun.
I love, hearing about like the Wendigo. Being in Arizona, we hear a lot about skinwalkers. And then also, Maddie, if you've heard this, I think it's called the Georgia Goblin.
Georgia Goblin? No.
Is it a Georgia Goblin or something goblin? There's like some kind of goblin that hangs out through Appalachia, but I just don't remember. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I've heard the girls talk about that.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's a goblin that it's
I
in
don't
the
know anything about
Appalachia
it.
stuff. Yeah, it is the most interesting thing. It may not be Georgia Goblin. I probably have the
I've
state
heard
wrong.
Misty and Ashley talk about it. I
but
think.
that's one of those weird instances of like,
The Mothman prophecies. I heard that's pretty freaking scary.
Yeah.
Have you guys read the documentary on that one?
I can't get her to go to West Point, West Virginia, because she doesn't like bridges.
No.
Oh,
I have a deathly fear of bridges. Like it's bad. It's
Yeah,
bad.
like-
And like what's that?
fly there.
Well, yeah, but still there's a bridge that fell down and people died and they were trapped under the water.
I get that.
No, I
Just-
can't.
I don't know if I could do the energy of the location. Very honestly, that's part of the thing with the Mothman location is like, I don't know how I would react to that energy based on the level of fear that I have of bridges and being trapped underwater.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm scared of water. I love water. I swim. I love boats. I'm not scared of water. I'm getting scared of trapped underwater.
Yes,
bridges
me
For
too.
whatever reason, but
Drowned in another life.
yeah, and that's what I think. And I think maybe more than
That
once too, because like witches drowning pools have this weird love-hate draw for me. Like we went and saw one, except the cat.
I'm hoping that.
We went to Mackinac Island and you've got this cute little quaint vacation island that people go and it's so unique. There's a witch's drowning pool. Who knew?
Wow.
Who knew? But we went and saw it and that was a weird experience because like I don't normally provoke or get mad, but like I'm sitting on the edge of this tide pool where they drown in the witches. I just get mad and I'm like, what are you gonna do? You gonna drown me?
Or you might have just been picking up on the intensity of the
Yeah.
anger.
Oh, definitely.
And he's actually put together this map, which is kind of fascinating. Like he started like color coding his show where there's been reports of cryptids and where there's been reports of hauntings and like seeing these little pockets of stuff. So we're kind of, I say
Oh,
we,
yeah,
I
it's-
haven't done anything. We are doing the research.
And it's actually just specifically the state of Iowa right now.
It's a collective effort.
I'm here to say, good job, babe.
There you go. There you go.
Proud of you. He is by far our memory person.
Yeah. I have another one. Let's see. I wanted to ask about what boxes do y'all, spirit boxes, do y'all recommend to use? What's your favorite? What works best?
Yeah, go to spirit boxes.
So we're not a huge one for actual spirit boxes, to be
Like
honest, like the
radio-based
SD7,
ones?
XD11. Yeah, and part of that is because I can't do them. For whatever reason, the box cycling through the stations that set something off with me. And I've heard other people who have abilities say this as well, that it gives them like the sense of vertigo, like the room starts spinning. And sometimes I'm okay, but a lot of times if someone turns on a spirit box, I have to leave the room. I can't do it. But
Interesting.
So SB11, what y'all like to use? Besides?
So our go-tos are actually going to end up being a little more software based.
Okay.
There's so we mentioned earlier that a developer, Keith Weldon, his two that are more or less like go-tos for us are one is called Spiritus, and the other is Necrophonic, and they both utilize sound banks and a randomizer algorithm. But the algorithm is going to be a little different each, and each one gives like kind of a different level of control. So with Spiritus, you have 4 sound banks that you can control things like intensity, and you can throw a filter on it, a little reverb, where Necrophonic has more sound banks, but a little less of that precise control. So Spiritus and Necrophonic are the two we typically go to like right away for recommendation.
Where can we buy your light up Ouija board?
So that one is like just a kind of a one-off. I don't know, like we talked about doing just simple like yes, no boards, but we're finding, just even from a practical investigator standpoint, running around with a 3-foot by 4-foot piece of wood everywhere is not practical.
we hadn't ever seen a board like that prior to the one that Chris made. I mean,
And I'm starting to think there's a
it was
reason.
one of a kind, and now we're figuring out why. It's great to take it with us, but it's definitely cumbersome. But it's super cool, so we still take it.
Do you have advice for anybody who wants to like really delve into this? Is this something that's more of a hobby, or is this something that could be a career? Like what's your, I mean, because really so many of us are fascinated with the paranormal world and we want to dig deep, but like what really is the logical side of it?
The logic, go ahead, sorry.
I was gonna say the reality of the situation is don't go into this thinking you're gonna get famous or rich. It's just not reality.
You notice the people that do turn, like, I shouldn't say the people that do turn into careers or anymore. The people that are getting famous doing this are the paranormal YouTubers, and those are the types of people that I would say 80% of them are not doing necessarily what we do. So for pretty much everybody, this is just like I don't want to go to hobby because I spend just as much time at this. If not, I spend more time doing this than my actual job.
It's a passion. Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of a calling in life. And I mean, if you have that, you're going to find your way down it regardless. But anybody like curious to do it as a hobby, I mean, by all means, take those two.
What are red flags? What are some red flags if they're not legit? They're just kind of.
If they guarantee something.
If they promise you're going to have an experience or see a ghost.
Overuse of the word demon. Or
Evil,
really
demon, attack. 40 years between us. No demons, no attacks. You know.
Do you have your own ghosts in your home, or do you guys like scout the house out before you live there?
So the house was actually, I lived here before we got together. So the house was actually mine first. And I guess I didn't even realize I had done it, but I must have put some sort of force field around the house. I've never had anything happen here in the house, but we were sitting on the love seat one night watching TV. And I see Chris just keep glancing over our shoulder, which is where the front door is. We're on split level. And I'm like, what are you looking at? And he's like, well, there's people out there. I'm like, oh God. And I start getting up. He's like, no, they're not real people. I mean, they're not like fleshy people. I'm like, oh, what are they doing out there? Well, they know they can't come in. Oh, okay. Good. This is my house. This is my space.
Well, thank you guys so much. This has been super enjoying, and I'm fully.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna spread your word out there, and hopefully more people will watch your lives. And I know I'm gonna be watching it, and you'll be on my mind all weekend long.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So many cool
Enjoy
places.
New Orleans.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I think I got my butt pinched by not a person, because everybody was sitting down, and I turned around, there was nobody close to me. And I'm waiting for a drink and just feel a pinch in my butt, and thought of some random drunkard, right? It's New Orleans Mardi Gras.
Yeah, somebody was flirting with you.
Mardi Gras just happened, and I'm like, okay, all right.
We definitely need to get you guys out here to Arizona. How can people find you guys? Share your link, share your info, because I'm sure that people are going to look you up and watch some of your videos. And
yeah, so you guys pretty much anywhere online at Travelers Moon Para. So that's going to be our handles for like Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Just look up Travelers Moon on YouTube. That's probably where to find us. But if you
can find our documentary.
And maybe some other stuff coming up in the future.
Oh, there's a plan. Is this a spoiler alert?
It's to keep an eye out kind of thing. We got some stuff in the works.
Yeah.
If you just go to our website, travelersmoonpara.com, that's going to get you links to all the websites and the events we might be hosting, our upcoming calendars.
Facebook and TikTok are the places to follow us if you want to watch our live investigations. We do go live quite a bit when we're out doing the investigations, because we think that it's good for people to see how it really happens versus what you see on TV.
And that's a nice little transparency.
Yeah, the TV shows can be great. But I think people forget sometimes they're out there for 2, 3, 4, 5 days, and that's been condensed down to this half-hour, 45-minute show that you get 5 minutes of something really maybe happening that's maybe, so it does help show the reality of the situation, that a lot of times it's us sitting in the dark talking to the walls.
Well, thank you guys again. And, maybe we'll have you on again next season and get some updates on your spoiler alert that you wouldn't tell us.
Yeah.
All right. You guys take care.
Thanks so much, guys.
Good night. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks.
Awesome.